Chapter 3. Dan pulls himself together, another surge of adrenaline, different this time, kicking in and no doubt masking the pain of our full-speed collision. "Do you know him?" I ask. Dan shakes his head. "I take it he's dead," I say, watching from the sidelines as Dan pulls off his glove and moves down the collar from the boy's neck to feel for a pulse. "Anything?" Dan continues to move his fingers, first on the injured side and then to the other, as it occurs to me that the sensation in Dan's fingers might have been affected by our recent crash. "Here," I say, "let me try." Nothing. Even the bleeding seems like it stopped long before we arrived on the scene. I can hear hurried panting behind us and the sound of uneven footsteps in the snow. I turn to look, Dan contorting his body for a better view. "Is he dead?" asks the voice. She's young, same age as me, or maybe a couple of years older, closer to Nicholas and Dan's ages. Her accent strange to my ears, snowboard broken, clothes torn, ski boots missing. I turn to Dan, struggling to make sense of everything, struggling to know what we should do first. I want to call Eloise, to hear her friendly voice telling me that everything will be okay, and I want to call Nicholas, and I have to tell Emilio that I'll be late for work, and one thing at a time, Maddie. "I got this," says Dan, placing a hand on my wrist as he holds up his phone to his ear, waiting for the receiver to pick up. I can feel my eyes filling with tears, but I know I have to be strong because Dan is struggling too, only he's trying to be tough for my sake. I have to pull myself together. I wipe my hands in the snow beside the boy. They aren't bloodied, but I want to wash off any trace of the dead. My muscles are already stiffening from 2 falls, and it's tricky to stand myself upright. "Here," I say, taking off my jacket and handing it to the girl shivering behind me. "You look frozen." "Oh," says the girl. "Thanks. But what about you? Wouldn't you get cold?" I shake my head. Sure, I might get a bit chilly, but mainly because I'm soaked in sweat from a morning of exercise, unlike her, ill-dressed by any measure for being out on the slopes. She catches my eyes watching her, thinking over her lack of suitable clothing. "I know," she says. "Let's just say I was advised to put a coat on before going out, but that I decided in my wisdom that I knew best." I can't help but smile, knowing how much I hate being told what to do. I point at her broken snowboard. "And that?" I ask. She's looking warmer already, shaking a little less, conversation distracting her from the grim reality of our situation. Got a bit too friendly with the tree," she says. "Ah," I reply. Now that I can relate to. Something tells me I'm going to be really stiff by bedtime. Took a bit of a battering myself, trying out some new stuff on the pipe, then crashing into Dan. And I wish I could take back that last part, because now I've reminded both of us that there's a body. Dan kneeling over him as the 3 of us wait for the police to arrive. The girl's expression changes as her eyes fall on the boy in the snow, shivers returning. "Did you know him?" she asks, eyes full of sadness, cheeks bloodless beneath her snow-tanned skin. I shake my head. "You?" She affirms that she didn't. He seems so young as well. What a waste. I can't tell whether time passes slowly or fast as we wait for the imminent arrival of the Valdezera police force, all 3 of them. Bastian Reyna, his assistant Bianco Bellissimo, and a 3rd assistant who works on the desk at the station. I know them because they already brought me, and most of the residents of Valdezera, in for questioning when my ex-chalet mate Sophia poisoned their local pastry chef with a red velvet donut. "Miss Cook, isn't it?" says Bastian, as he traipses through the snow in his neatly pressed navy blue uniform. He's hardly dressed for the occasion. Polished shoes, no doubt soaked through, as he steps tentatively into the knee-deep drift of snow and over to the barrier by the chairlift. He pulls out a white handkerchief from his pocket as he reaches us on the flatter, harder ground and stoops for a moment, polishing off the remaining fragments of snow from his buffed shoes. "Odd how you seem to have reached the crime scene before I," he says in his thick Austrian accent. "You do know you are not qualified, even with all your criminal book reading. I am the only detective in Valdezera. The services of children are not required. Actually, I say, it was Dan and I who found the body. Bastien lowers his bifocals down the slope of his large nose, his moustache and eyebrows rippling across his face as he speaks. So, he says, you're suspects? I can hear Dan muttering under his breath, face hidden from Bastien. Oh boy, here we go again. And I have to stifle a faint snigger, because we both know all too well how this is going to go. I'd forgotten that glimmer in Bastien's eyes when he thinks he's already caught his killer, that sense of certainty about him, the dog that got a bone. I'm about to speak, but I think better of it. Where Bastien is concerned, it's always better to stick to less is more, to only tell him what you absolutely have to tell him by law. Looks pretty straightforward, would you not say, Bianco? We have a body and a crime scene, our two suspects, and their traces are all around. Bianco is doing his best to cover up a large yawn, notebook in hand, scribbling down every word that Bastien utters. He does a double take for a moment, pointing his pencil at each of us in turn and scratching his head. He looks exhausted, large black bags beneath his eyes as he counts us once more. 2 suspects, he says, flinching and avoiding eye contact with Bastien. That's what I said, is it not? What are you, deaf? Says Bastien, now waving a hand at Dan and I. 1 there and 1 there. 1 and 1 makes 2. Honestly, I don't know what's wrong with you today, Bianco. Bianco hesitates for a moment. And, what about her, he says, pointing at the girl with the broken snowboard, still wearing my jacket. Bastien waves his hand dismissively, making a ch sound as he turns his attention back to me and Dan. 2 suspects, he says to Bianco. Him and her. Now go on, write that down, and make sure the body is dead. Sir, says Bianco, breaking the point of his pencil as he hurriedly finishes up scribbling and stuffs the notebook back in his pocket. He looks like he might be sick at any moment, eyes closed, head turned away from the body as he lowers himself and tries to force a quivering hand towards where the pulse would be if the boy were alive. His face twists in multiple directions, fingers begrudgingly making first contact with the skin. He withdraws them quickly, lips screwed up as Bastien orders him to take more notes. He wipes his hand on his trousers, gulping hard, face turning a vibrant shade of green. Should I call Dr. Sim? Asks Bianco, hesitantly. Why? Screams Bastien. You think the doctor can bring the dead back to life? Honestly, Bianco, I really do wonder about you sometimes. But, says Bianco, don't we need a doctor to declare him dead? Bastien straightens himself up, dusts down his sleeves and pushes his bifocals back up his large nose, laughing to himself. Right, he says. Good work, Bianco. I was just testing you to see how much you'd learned on my guidance. Very good work. I see my methods are very effective. You might have my job one day. Really? Says Bianco, a faint smile on his face at the thought of a future promotion. Bastien's face draws into a frown, heavy eyebrows forming a V-shape over his pinprick eyes. No, he says, there's only one head of police, and that is me. I'm sorry to interrupt, says Dan, but I really need to open up the ski shop. We'll have a riot on our hands if folks don't get their ski gear on their first day on the slopes, and I'm sure the police wouldn't want the news of a dead body to get out. Terrible publicity for the ski resort and, well, no tourists would mean no need for a head of police. Nicely played, Dan. I can't help but feel proud of him. It doesn't take long for Bastien to consider this, and before he can answer, Dan is already prepared. And it's not like you don't know where to find me, is it, officer? I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Bastien twizzles the ends of his moustache as he considers this argument further. He hesitates. Very well, he says, but no leaving the country in the meantime, he adds, feeling rather smug. And what about me, I ask, assuming that the same argument stands, that Bastien knows where to find me when he's ready to take a statement. What about you? Asks Bastien. Do I need you to stay and meddle with the case after you've done such a great job of already messing up my crime scene? Great, I say, a little too enthusiastically. So it's okay for me to go and open at the Snow Mountain Cafe? Because you know there'll be a drama if folks don't get their coffee. And now I know that I've blown it with Bastien. that now he'll do everything in his power to stop me from serving up what he considers to be the worst drug on the planet, caffeine, closely followed by sugar. Both officers are staring at me, eyes bulging for entirely different reasons. Bianco's, because it seems he's not had his caffeine fix for the day, and Bastien's, because I've just reminded him that I'm considered the queen of donuts and an expert barista to boot. I'm so annoyed at myself. You, says Bastien, nose pointing sharply at Dan as his glasses move snail-like down to where a solitary drip is dangling precariously from the end of his bulbous nose. I will find you anon, but don't go anywhere, and don't tell anyone what's happened. We don't want panic. Take the girl with you, he says, pointing at the girl with the broken snowboard. I'm trying to communicate with Dan through eye movements and facial expressions and the occasional, very discreet shrug, but it doesn't seem to be working. I cough politely. So, you don't want me to stay? I ask, now totally confused. Yes, says Bastien, as Bianco continues to write every word of the conversation in his notebook. Now I'm even more confused. Yes, you don't want me to stay, or yes you do? There's a moment of death stares as Bastien hones in on me, Bianco struggling to keep his eyes open as he stomps frozen feet on the ground to wake and warm himself up. Now listen to me carefully, Miss Cook, he says. I order you to stay exactly where you are. I want to keep you where I can see you. You are a suspect in the murder of this poor, innocent boy, and I will not let you out of my sight until this case is closed. Do I make myself clear? I shrug my shoulders, nodding my head in silence, gulping hard, willing Dr. Sim to arrive as soon as he can, so he can save me from the wrath of Bastien. Besides, says Bastien, dusting down his epaulets, I'm going to need a translator if I'm to make any sense of that buffoon. Can't understand a word he says, calls himself a doctor when no one can understand him, and we can't afford to be here all day. We'll need the body to be moved before the tourists arrive for the ski lift. Bianco, go and make the ski lift stop. We don't want anyone coming up onto the slope until this mess is all cleared up. I'll let Eloise and Amelia know, says Dan, doing his best to reassure me. Want me to take your snowboard with me? I'll drop it off at the cafe for you. Sure, I say, as Dan takes off his jacket and passes it to me, since yours is already taken.